So as a micro homesteader, I'm always looking for new ways to be more self-sufficient and to try out new things and expand what I can do. So one of the things that I've recently decided to look at was the BOKASHI composting. So we're going to go through the unit, what it comes with, how to set it up, and then I'll give you my feedback after having used it for about a month so that you can get an idea of how the whole thing works. Let's take a look at the BOKASHI composter. Hey darling, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Carrie Martin, and I'm just a city girl who wishes she was a country girl who is living in the burbs. So on this channel we talk about micro homesteading, which can include everything from a lot of gardening to canning to DIYs. I talk about hydroponics, basically all the things that are going to make you more self-sufficient. So if that's your thing, then be sure to hit the subscribe and the bell notification so you will always know when I put up new videos. And now that that is out of the way, let us take a look at the BOKASHI composter. So here it is. It's a decent size. So I ended up getting the 2-unit model. They say that's a good one to have for when you have a family. It's also good because then when one of the units is full, you switch over to the empty one and start filling that up. So you always kind of have it going in a cycle. There's not too much to it. It's pretty simple. So it's got, and they're pretty burly too. So it comes with a handy dandy lid. That is important because this whole process is anaerobic. So the less air that you're going to let in here, the better. It's not really like I'm gonna probably save up my scraps a little bit rather than just opening it every single day and putting them in. I just have a Tupperware with a lid on it that I put all my scraps into, and then when that's full, I'll open this up and dump this in. The thing that they mention that's important is when you are putting the stuff in is you want to have something in the composter to be able to pack things down, because again, the less air the better for this. If there's a lot of air in here, the process is just not going to work properly. So let's take a look at what this comes with. So it's got a nice pretty burly lid on here, and then inside we have the bran. This is the powerhouse of the operation. This is what's going to make BOKASHI into the compost. So that is important. With this unit, with the 2 of them, I got 2 complete units and 2 brands. I have seen something where you can learn how to make this. I don't know enough about that yet, but we'll definitely be looking into it. And then we have the bottom drainage bin. So this is going to let all the liquid flow through. And then in the unit, oh, there's still one more thing in there. We have the measuring cup. And then down there, that's the spigot, which comes out on the front. And then you can turn this to basically let the BOKASHI tea come out. One thing that's mentioned a lot is to be gentle. You just want to finger tight and loosen this. You don't want to be cranking it, or you can damage the spigot. So just be gentle. What we're going to do is to set this up. All you're going to do is you put the little thing in the bottom, and then once you have a bunch of food scraps, you can go ahead and put them in here. You want to press them down. If you have a lot to put in, you're going to want to put it in layers. You want to put bran in between, like you want to sprinkle it in between the layers. You don't want to put in, like, say, fill it up halfway and then just put bran on the top. That's not going to help the process. Put down the layers, put in some bran, put down some more layers, push it down. Then every time you're adding into this after you've got the base layer set up, you're always going to want to put more of the bran in. Another thing that's good to do is to chop up the pieces that go in here about 1 to 2 inches in size. That's just going to make the whole process work easier. That is pretty much it for setting up the main bin. So that's pretty much for setting up the main bin. Honestly, there's not a lot to it. You just got to remember to not open it all the time. You want to chop up the pieces that go in it. You want to sprinkle the bran in between the layers. You want to compress it. Air is not your friend in this. So one thing I want to clear up before we even get started on this, and I guess it was a misconception that I had. I thought I was going to get the BOKASHI composter and I would get the tea, which I'll mention in a second. And then I was going to have this wonderful compost that I would put in the garden. So the way the BOKASHI composting works, you are going to put your food waste in, and then once the unit is full, you're going to leave it sealed for about 2 weeks. And during this time, all the bacteria and the anaerobic bacteria and everything is going to get going. So a few days after you seal the unit, that's when you're going to start seeing the bokashi tea come out. Now, this stuff is fabulous for plants, but disclaimer, it is very acidic. This whole unit is kind of acidic in what it creates. So while the tea is fabulous for your plants, you have to dilute it at the right ratio. Basically, the recommendation is to do it at 100 to 1. So for each unit of bokashi tea, you need to add 100 units of water. So very important that you keep that in the right proportions, because otherwise you could burn and damage your plants. And we don't want that. We want to help the plants. We don't want to hurt them. Once the bin is full, you're going to want to leave it sealed for 2 weeks. And that's to let the whole fermentation process happen. So after that 2 weeks, you could open it up and you're probably going to see that it looks exactly the same way as when you put it in. When you open it, you might be confused or shocked because it's going to look pretty much the exact same way that you put it in. And while it visually looks the same, chemically and physically it has changed by the bokashi process. So while you don't get the compost I was envisioning from this unit, what you are essentially getting is pre-compost that has been, it speeds along the process so that you will get to soil faster. Once the 2 weeks is up, then you have 3 choices for how you use this pre-compost. You can go and do the trench method, where you would basically dig a trench, put all the pre-compost in it, cover it up with soil, and then leave it in the dirt that way. Because myself, I am going to a fully no-dig approach, I don't want to go digging trenches in my garden. The other 2 options are, one, to add it to your compost. I did some research and it is safe for vermicomposting, which is important to me because that's what I'm going to be starting in the spring. So you can add that into the vermicomposting bin or into your regular compost. And the other option, which could be good especially if you live in a very small space like a condo or an apartment, as long as you have a balcony, because you're probably not going to want this inside, you can create what's basically a soil factory, and where you can have some sort of bin and you can put the pre-compost in there, mix it with some soil, and just let the final composting occur. So I will be building a soil factory in the spring, summer, just so I can demonstrate how to do that. Once I have done that, I will link the video above. My go-to is going to be adding it to the vermicomposting bin. When you open the lid, it's important that you know what to expect and when things might have gone wrong. So if you open the bin and you see some white mold on top, that's going to be okay. It should smell a bit sweet and pickly, kind of like dill pickles, I guess. And so as long as you're seeing that, you're good to go, and then you can take it and move it on to finish the process. However, if you open the bin and you're seeing a blue-green mold, or it just smells disgusting, then it's going to have to go in the garbage. Something's gone wrong. Either you added in too much air or just it didn't work. So you don't want to be taking that pre-compost and putting it into the vermicomposting bin or anywhere else, because it's just not good. It's also important that you do not add moldy items into the bokashi. They should be fresh, or as fresh as possible. So let's talk about the best place to keep the bokashi bin. It's not going to be something that's going to want to go through extremes of temperature. I'm choosing to keep it under my kitchen sink, because then it's close to where I'm going to be having my food scraps. And then the temperature stays pretty consistent in the house, so it's not too cold, it's not too hot. So the key to the bokashi system and its success is the bran that's used in it, which contains yeasts, microbes, and fungi in a dormant state. So those are the things that are going to become active once given the anaerobic conditions and some food scraps and some time, that are going to give you the pre-compost. One of the things that I absolutely loved about the bokashi is the fact that it lets you compost things that you wouldn't be able to compost otherwise, either using a vermicomposting system or just a regular compost. While you can add all the things that you would put into those things, like your food scraps, your leafy greens, and any vegetables and anything that are coming out of your kitchen from that perspective, you can also add into this cooked food, meat, dairy, grains, pasta, bones, pretty much anything. The one thing that they say not to put too much in is liquids. It'll create its own liquids. You don't want to be adding more of that. But it just means you can pretty much compost everything coming out of your kitchen, which is fantastic. And if you do have a vermicomposting setup, then once it's gone through the bokashi process, you can add that in there, which is an added bonus. Another thing I want to mention about the bokashi tea is it's alive. So it's not something you want to siphon off and then let it sit around, because then it's going to lose its vigor and basically die. When you are taking the tea out, you're going to want to make sure to dilute it, as I mentioned, but then use it up relatively quickly. Okay, so we're going to add in the first step. Bokashi bin. I was cleaning out the pantry and found some containers that were past their date, so decided rather than throwing them out, put them in the composter. So really trying to put it through the test. So I've got some chicken bones in there, all the stuff I pulled out of the cupboard, and then now I'm going to put in a little bit of the Bokashi bran. It says to do about a tablespoon per inch, but they also say you can't have too much bran. So because I'm just getting everything started, I just want to get down a nice layer, and the bran contains all of the microbes and beneficial bacteria that are going to help all the process start. One thing I've definitely already learned is moving forward, I will be chopping it before I put it into my compost container. So you may be wondering why I'm even using a food scrap container and why I'm not just putting it directly into the bokashi. Well, this is an anaerobic system, so you want to have it open as little as possible. So because it's open right now because I'm just starting it off, but I don't want to be constantly opening it and throwing things in. So by having the separate container that I will now pre-chop before I put it in there, which just means I have to open this up less. The other thing that you want to do when you're adding, so always putting more bran in between each layer. And then the other thing you want to do is have a plate. I have this little one. And you're just going to want to push everything down as much as possible. I'm probably just going to leave this plate in here. And then I will put the lid on. And we will leave that until I have to add to it again. At this point, we're going to pause and wait for future Kiri to give you an update on how things are going with the bokashi composting. So I will turn it over to her. So the first thing is to see how much tea we get. Let's turn the spout on. There we go. Okay, so I just finished emptying it, and we got like 20 ounces of bokashi tea out of one, which is amazing because you have to, this is very acidic, so you need to water it down. So this is going to make a lot of amazing microbe-rich tea to go into the soil and feed the plants. So next thing is to get the bokashi open and get it into the pot. Okay, so I brought it outside because that's where I'm going to be using it. So we'll open it up and see. I have the plate on top because you want to keep pushing it down as it's going. There's lots of bran in there. We'll put that in, and then I'm just going to dump this into the trench that I made. But essentially, you dig a trench, you bury it. It's going to look very much the same as when it did when you put it in, but the bran has helped and the microbes have helped to fundamentally chemically change the composition of it. So it shouldn't attract any animals or anything, but I guess we will see. But yeah, so we will check on this tomorrow and see how it's going. It shouldn't smell bad when you open it. It should smell a little yeasty, maybe a little sour, but it shouldn't smell bad. So a lot of the projects are kind of just melding at the moment. So bokashi is in the trench. The peony needs to be moved because that's where the raised bed is going, and the peony is going to go beside the garage, but the lemon balm and the mint have to be moved because the pine berries are also going there. So a lot of work to do up front today. Before I can move the peony, I have to deal with this because the peony is going to go here, plus this needs to be moved because the pine berries and the strawberries are going to go there. Once this is cleared, then the peony from over there can come over here. I'm gonna start digging out the mint and the lemon balm. And while I know this, do not plant it in the ground because it will take over very quickly. So I have moved some of them to the back in a pot and see how they do there, and then hopefully I'll be able to get out most of the roots, but we'll see. Okay, so came out back because I need to clean the bokashi, and then after that pretty much all I need to do is order some more bran and then start all over again. Oh, those are the red alpine strawberries that are going to move to the front to go in with the pine berries. And one thing I should mention, when I'm done rinsing this, I'm not just going to dump out the water. I'm going to put the water into my raised beds because essentially this is like more of the bokashi tea. I've watered it down, and I don't want to waste any of those microbes or any of that nutrients. So I'm going to make sure that I get those into my beds and make the most of everything and then start all over again. Over to the beds. All right, carefully. And then I'm going to put some here in with the potatoes. First time using the bokashi, I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, I set it there, I filled it up, I left it. Pretty much you're supposed to leave it, after it's full, you're supposed to leave it for 2 weeks. Full disclosure, I left mine for much longer and it smelled fine. There's nothing bad going on, so I'm very, very happy. I'm gonna get a whole bunch more bran and I will keep doing this. My goal for this year is to really build healthy soil organically and naturally, so the bokashi is going to be great for that. So the other thing I should mention, on top of the bokashi kitchen composter, they also have a pet composter one. Now, a couple disclaimers with this. I don't put bacon's poo in it, the dog poo. I do put the cat poo in it, but I had to switch from using the clumping cat litter to a walnut because it needs to be biodegradable, obviously. I will show that to you in a second. The other thing that's important, because this one does have pet waste in it, you're not going to put it in the garden. This can just go pretty much in a flower bed, whereas the other one, the BOKASHI kitchen composter, that can go into the garden, and it should go in the garden. But this one with the pet waste, you just don't want to, because there can be bacteria and other parasites, and you definitely don't want that getting into the soil where you are growing your food. But it is another option if you want to start composting your pet's litter as well. Is the one that I use. It's just a walnut shell cat litter. I get mine from Pet Value, but yep, that's what I use. I actually like it a lot better than the old stuff that I used to use, the lightweight clumping cat litter. I find there's a lot less dust. It doesn't smell as much. I just find it lasts a lot longer. I just prefer it, and it's more natural, so bonus. All right, so these are all dried out nice and clean. I'm gonna go ahead and just reset it up. So this goes into the bottom, and then I'm just gonna throw my plate in there until I start filling it up. I'm gonna have to order some more bran, but that's it. Oh, yeah, and make sure you closed the spout again, because otherwise that's going to be a disaster. That's it for my bokashi composting video. Hopefully you found that helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up, because YouTube likes that and it helps me reach more people. I really hope that you guys found that helpful. The bokashi composters are great, especially if you have a micro homestead and you don't have a lot of space, or even if you're apartment homesteading or whatever it is. They're great because you can keep them inside, they don't smell, plus you get the bokashi tea, which is fantastic. I'm going to do a separate video on that. Until next time, don't forget to go out there and enjoy the little things and make food grow. Bye guys.